Mr. Marc Morano, founder Climate Depot, thank you for coming to visit with us in the past, and thank you for making time to visit with us here over the internet today. We appreciate you being with us again, and looking forward to your entertaining and factual presentations there. And if you could raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. We have a new process. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief. If so, please indicate by saying I do.
I do.
Thank you, sir. You can begin when you're ready.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not seeing my PowerPoint on my screen here at the moment, so this could be a glitch. And let me see here. Nope. Anyway, I don't see where it is, but I assume he has it up.
He has it up for you. And if we can turn the volume up, Griffin.
There it is. But okay. I can't see where he is in the PowerPoint. But I was going to talk today about the politics and where this is going and how democracy is being hijacked. There's been a lot of concern about democracy. This is a real threat to democracy. And what I'm going to talk about today in a nutshell is how the entire climate debate is moving from committees like yours, Chairman Metcalf, to the executive branch, to under the aegis of emergency powers. Because what has happened, and I'm going to go through the details, is the climate activists saw how COVID solutions of lockdowns, mask mandates were imposed without the vote of legislators, without the vote of Congress, city halls, supervisors. And that is now the goal of the climate activists. And I'm going to lay that case out as how the entire climate debate has essentially been hijacked by the Chinification or the one-party rule of America through the executive branch. And so with that, I believe you still have the power. So let's go to slide 2, which shows the cover of my book. That's who I am. I used to work in the Environment and Senate Public Works Committee. I'm now with Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, CFACT's Climate Depot. And that's my book was Green Fraud, wrote about green energy. And also my new book is The Great Reset, which is dealing with what I'm talking about today. So when we talk about this threat to democracy, we're talking about the World Economic Forum. This is the group run by Klaus Schwab, started in 1971. It's at Davos meetings. And after the COVID lockdowns in March of 2020, in June, the chairman of this came out and said, this COVID-19 represents a rare, narrow window of opportunity to reset our world. So this is a very powerful group, has among its members everyone from Prince Charles and Bill Gates to all the Fortune 500 companies and politicians, academia, Hollywood celebrities, royal family. And the Great Reset was every country must participate, every industry. So the idea was they were going to turn capitalism more global, less choice, less national sovereignty. This is some of the slick videos they produced under a Great Reset. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Whatever you want will be delivered by drone. Now the question is, why would we go along? The U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower. And the reason for all this is they think the climate crisis is what to focus on next now that COVID is fading. There'll be a global price on carbon that will help make fossil fuels history. This is the goal, the World Economic Forum. 1 billion people will be displaced by climate change, is one of their claims. Meat will be an occasional treat, and we're seeing that happen around the world now. Supply chain shutting down modern agriculture. The Netherlands, the #1 meat exporter. And then polluters will have to pay a price to emit carbon dioxide, which isn't a pollutant. But this is the goals. Now, the Great Reset is here in 2022. They've collapsed our First Amendment rights. Big tech censorship is government censorship. Our current energy system is being intentionally collapsed with net zero, Green New Deal style policies that we've talked about here today. The transportation system is being collapsed, ban on gas-powered cars. And we also, with creating car shortages, our ability to own property is being threatened at this point. And we're going to talk a little bit about Bill Gates buying up American farmland. Again, all of this has to, at its root, the climate crisis, fossil fuels, exactly what this hearing, high-yield agriculture being systematically collapsed, and all of this, and of course, meat eating. So who's in on this Great Reset? Justin Trudeau has said this is the opportunity for a Great Reset. Every Western leader jumped on the World Economic Forum. Al Gore, I think it's time for a Great Reset. John Kerry, the World Economic Forum is going to play front and center role in refining the Great Reset. It's going to happen faster than we can imagine, says John Kerry. So it's here and it's happening. In 1932, a version of the Great Reset was proposed upon America in 1932 and 1943 book. This is Roosevelt's top economic advisor. He envisioned control of government control of banking, energy, transportation, agriculture, and communication. And at the end of his 1932 book, this is FDR's kitchen cabinet member, Stuart Chase, why should the Soviets have all the fun remaking the world? Well, in 2022, we can update that to say, why should China have all the fun remaking the world? And part of the reason we're seeing all this chaos, and part of the reason COVID mandates went on extra long, part of the reason energy collapsed, part of the reason they're going after agriculture, part of the reason they're going after transportation is to create chaos. Because only in this chaos can we then create transformational change that change society that you could never get done without the crisis or chaos. Vladimir Lenin talked about this. His slogan before in pre-Bolshevik revolution, Russia was the worse the better. So you want to create havoc in order to impose your agenda. So right now, the once free West is copying China's tyranny. We copied their evidence on lockdown, and we followed it hook, line, and sinker. So this is what we've done, and this is where we are coming now with climate and when it comes to energy policy. The once free West has lauded Chinese one-party rule. This is the New York Times, Tom Friedman, lauding China's ability to get things done under one-party rule. No messiness, a democracy. The UN climate chief has lamented U.S. democracy, lauded China for doing it right on climate change. Justin Trudeau has basic admiration. Here's a level of admiration I have for China's basic dictatorship. So with that, the United Nations just last week declared Vladimir Putin a climate hero. Political Europe did the same thing, that he is a blessing for the climate because why? He's creating chaos. He's creating fossil fuel shortages, which gives the green agenda a chance to double down. So this is how we get perverted. Vladimir Putin becomes a climate hero under this great reset, under this hijacking of democracy, which the Pennsylvania House Committee is really trying to keep control. You want to be able to vote and debate and control Pennsylvania's energy. Unfortunately, this is coming from beyond our borders. The UN has declared we own the science of climate change, and the world should know it. So they partnered with Google to make sure that only approved narrative climate results reappear. That is beyond the control of legislators. That's what I say big tech censorship is government censorship. It's government global organization censorship. So the next crisis, this is Klaus Schwab, the next crisis is already waiting for us around the corner. It is the climate crisis. So they are waiting. Richard Lindzen, back in 2009, said it's hard to imagine a better leverage point than carbon dioxide to assume control over a society. It's essential to our energy. If you demonize it, you so to speak control everything. Well, they imagined it. And what they imagined was a virus that they claimed was worse than the Spanish flu, and we needed unprecedented lockdowns to deal with. And this is on the heels. 2018, climate change was already declared by the World Health Organization to be the world's greatest health challenge. So what's happening in real time, Chairman Metcalf and members of the committee, is climate is now being morphed into a public health threat, basically saying that unchecked climate change will lead to more viruses. And this phrase, climate lockdowns, which I'm showing you on the screen, I assume you guys are keeping up. Are you on the screen that says climate lockdowns?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. This is actually a phrase uttered by a Bill Gates, George Soros-funded professor, Mariana Mazzucato in Europe. She came up with the phrase climate lockdowns. This is not climate skeptics coming up with it. In 2013, the UN's Ivo de Boer said the only way a 2015 climate agreement, the Paris Climate Accords, can meet their 2-degree goal was essentially to shut down the whole global economy. Now, that was a pretty prescient comment because in 2019, November, before lockdowns, before most of the world knew COVID existed, the UN demanded a 7% yearly cut in CO2. And now this is the headline, cut global emissions by 7.6%. That was November 2019. Let's fast forward to December 2020. 1 year later, next is presto. The UN eerily got what it wanted. World carbon dioxide emissions fell 7%. So I'm not saying this to say they had some kind of plan to make it happen. They were ready and waiting. But what I'm telling you right now is the solutions to COVID and economic crushing that we've seen bring smiles to the faces of these climate activists. Next one. 2021 demands to continue lockdown-like emissions. This is an actual headline in the UK Guardian. Global lockdowns every 2 years needed to meet the Paris CO2 climate goals, according to the UK Guardian. So if you love lockdowns, you're going to love more. Senator Chuck Schumer is now urging Biden to declare a climate emergency, national climate emergency. All right, next. CNN, this is Sanders and AOC. are urging Joe Biden to declare a national climate emergency by declaring we're out of time. This is the Washington Post from this summer. Biden could declare climate emergency in as little as this week. This was back in July. He decided to wait till after the midterms. This will happen. Make no mistake. Joe Biden declaring a national climate emergency, what would it mean? According to the Center for Biological Society, triggers the ability for Biden to deploy 130 different powers. That's what's shocking. That's the bypassing of democracy that I'm talking about. Next slide. The International Energy Agency has told us in a net zero report, as part of what they would call an energy lockdown, which can only be called that, report urges behavioral changes to fight climate, shift away from private car use, upper speed limits, thermostat controls, limits on hot water. This is the International Energy Agency telling us what's coming. We went for decades shutting down domestic energy in Europe, net zero, Green New Deal, cap and trade schemes, RGGI, which Pennsylvania participated. All of this is where we are headed. This is their end game. $3.8 trillion spent, and we moved the needle 1% on fossil fuels. This is Goldman Sachs economist Jeff Curry just 2 days ago on CNBC. We did $3.8 trillion investment in renewables. We moved our U.S. fossil fuel consumption from 82% to 81%, and that's likely to bump back up to 82% given our energy crisis and the ramping up and more coal use, especially in Europe and other places. That's what this green agenda has gotten us. $4 trillion nearly spent with not even a 1% result that's about to be wiped out. The journal Nature now says COVID lockdowns are the key to begin personal carbon allowances. So in order to achieve a safer climate, this is the journal Nature. These are peer-reviewed studies coming out of our top journals. This is not a blogger at Friends of the Earth or Greenpeace, and I'm highlighting it and making hay. This is what the scientific establishment is pushing. This is why Pennsylvanians should be very worried. Their democracy is at stake. Climate lockdowns. This is the next one. Climate is the greatest threat to global health. They 230 medical journals. Top medical journals have been hijacked, and they're saying COVID-19 response to be a template for the climate response. What does that mean? Emergency power abuse. In other words, you declare a climate emergency, you don't need no stinking democracy. You don't need Pennsylvania House hearings. You don't need Pennsylvania House to vote, a Senate vote. You don't need Congress. You can just declare an emergency a la China, which the left has praised for years. This is the problem we're facing. Anthony Fauci, CDC director, all in on this. He says COVID-19 is due to extreme backlash from nature, will require changes in human behavior and other radical changes, rebuilding the infrastructure of human existence. Anthony Fauci wrote this in the journal Cell. This is not some dark, hidden plan. They're out in the open. Electric vehicles won't save us. We need to get rid of cars completely. This is according to Business Insider. And again, this is the war on fossil fuels, the topic of this hearing. Boris Johnson's transport secretary last year, owning a car is outdated 20th century thinking. We must move to shared mobility. Do you get the idea? They're going after car ownership. They come for your car and then your house. This is next. Houses pose more danger to climate than vehicles. Next. China's buying up American farmland, but don't worry. There's not going to be a Chinese land monopoly. Why? Because Bill Gates, American ingenuity, beat him to it. Bill Gates, not the one in overalls, but he's now America's single largest farmland owner. Who cares? What's his agenda? What could Bill? Next. Bill Gates' agenda is that we eat lab-grown meat from stem cells taken from cows and an unborn calf blood, and they grow it in a lab with no bone structure, and then we print it in 3D printers. The Great Reset World Economic Forum is so excited about this lab-grown meat. This is the next one. That they want you to print this meat in a 3D printer, and you can print up to 6 kilograms of meat an hour. You put in this lab-grown meat. This is what they're doing as they shut down animal agriculture. They're shutting down the Netherlands, the number one farm meat exporter in Europe, and they're going it in Canada and Australia, going after the high-yield agriculture. They're also pushing insect eating on us. Again, all to save us from the alleged climate catastrophe caused by our fossil fuel use. Next up, CNN touting cockroach milk as the protein drink you didn't know you've been missing. All of this is based on the climate scare and our fossil fuel use. Next. You are the pollution they want to eliminate. This is a study in the journal, I believe this was journal Nature, but this was written up in Scientific American. Human pee is a problem pollutant in the U.S. that can contribute to warning. So we've had a UK study, the ones that regulate our breath, carbon dioxide, where humans exhale carbon dioxide, as asbestos, and now they want to regulate our pee as a pollutant in the United States. They want us to stop eating meat because our pee is creating too much nitrous oxide, which is allegedly warming the planet. Next up, your kids, Vogue magazine is having a baby now, pure environmental vandalism. So to sum this up, if you're speechless after this message, that's because climate change is causing speech loss. No joke. A new study out, and here's some of the media coverage. Climate change is accelerating language loss. This is in the impact of climate change on language loss. Keep calm and trust the experts. That's what the Great Reset is about. They don't want democracy. They want you to defer to expert opinion. Opinions like Anthony Fauci or United Nations climate chief, who the previous one had said global warming is his religion. New York Times says don't go down the rabbit hole of critical thinking because that leads to misinformation. Forbes magazine said you must not do your own research when it comes to science. And God forbid you question anything coming from a scientist. Next. Questioning authority has become too much of a good thing, and it's killing people. This is what the media and our establishment wants us to be like, not questioning. It's time to give up on facts, says Slate magazine, in favor of emotions. And why not? Greta Thunberg's famous line was, we want you to panic, because when you panic, you don't make good decisions, you're not rational, and you end up making very poor decisions, and you give up your democracy. So we need to have a great resist to this great reset. And we need to fight. We need to fight for things like this hearing today. We need Pennsylvanians and Americans to decide their own future, not have these dictates come from above. That's my organization. In terms of things like electric cars, which they're trying to ban, gas-powered cars, we now have corporate banks saying they won't give out car loans unless if you get a gas-powered car. They're creating shortages like they did in Cuba, like they did in East Germany. The government says you can only buy one car. All of this is based on hijacking democracy, declaring an emergency. The greatest abuse of human rights has come when governments declare emergencies. Get ready for the U.S. coming climate emergency. Thank you, Chairman Metcalf. Be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Morano. Appreciate you deliver such good information in such an entertaining way, but should be frightening to anybody that loves the constitutional republic in which we live. So thank you. Representative Vitali is looking forward to speaking with you here for some questions, I'm sure. I'm sure you'll enjoy his questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I'd just like to thank the chairman for presenting such a thoughtful and well-balanced hearing. With regard to this hearing today, I must tell you I am concerned with people who make a living selling books, accepting speakers' fees, accepting salaries from nonprofits by taking extremist, alarmist positions. Suggesting that, our personal cars are going to be taken away. They're going to come for our houses. We are we're going to be drinking cockroach milk and climate lockdowns. No one is suggesting that. I've been working with regard to climate change in Pennsylvania for 30 years, and I can tell you that's not been suggested. And to sort of go around to this hearing and others, putting out these alarmists, false hearings is not something. I think it's disgraceful.
Representative Vitali,
here's my question.
How do you respond to his documented presentation? It was documented, Representative Vitali. What you're denying is documented right in front of your eyes, and you're now denying it again.
I'm denying.
You are not a climate denier, but you are a climate alarmist and a fact denier, because you just had facts with documentation put up on the screen in front of you, and you claim it isn't true.
Your positions are ridiculous and extremist, and they are not comporting with my real life experience and working with Pennsylvania climate policy for the last 30 years. That's absurdity. So my question to you, you talked a lot about politics. Do you acknowledge climate change is real? And by climate change being real, I mean human-induced climate change that we must address. Do you acknowledge that is real? And if so, what do you propose to get us to carbon neutrality by mid-century?
Well, there's no way anyone should have a goal of carbon neutrality by mid-century or end of century. I think that whole thing is just a backdoor way to come up with a central planned 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan. And, to answer your question, has the Earth warmed? Yes, we've warmed. We've warmed since the end of the Little Ice Age in 1850. We've warmed since the 1970s global cooling scare. But we have not probably warmed since the Roman warming period of 0 AD, since the medieval warm period of about 900 to 1300 AD. And do humans contribute? Yeah, we could contribute. Can you distinguish humans' contribution from natural variability? Probably not, and not any way, shape, or form. And you can see that in hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, droughts, wildfires, on every metric on climate timescales. They are not increasing either in frequency or intensity. This is actually in peer-reviewed documents. It's in our websites of the U.S. government. You won't hear it necessarily from certain scientists or from certain consensus statements that are meant to be political. And just to answer your other question, my presentation, you mentioned the cockroach milk specifically, that was promoted by CNN. And right now in Australia and now in the Netherlands, they're giving school children cricket-based, insect-based snacks covered in fried oils and crunchy, so the kids don't even know it's an insect. But it's conditioning them to accept it. And why? Bill Gates has stated, and Bill Gates you need to pay attention to. He's not that wacky fringe figure. He's now America's single largest farmland owner. China isn't far behind him. But his goal is to stop all actual meat eating from livestock in the entire Western world, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, and move to lab-grown meat. And as a part of that, the United Nations World Economic Forum, which the United States is party, is pushing insect eating. So I would actually, not challenging you at all, that you have not talked about this in Pennsylvania, because these ideas aren't coming from Pennsylvania. And that was the whole point of my talk, is they are coming and being imposed upon the United States from around the world. To give you another example, Joe Biden administration wants us to join a WHO pandemic treaty. This treaty would take away national sovereignty and allow Bill Gates funded scientists at the World Health Organization to declare a pandemic and then demand lockdowns in the U.S., stay-at-home orders, vaccine mandates, etc. You can go around and say, well, no one in Pennsylvania is talking about that. But it's happening outside of the state of Pennsylvania. It's happening with our government, with our organizations. And that's what my talk is about here today. But I thank you. I understand your confusion on that, because I can understand that people aren't talking about this in Pennsylvania because it's not a thing happening from the ground up. It's not coming from local citizens or local politicians or state politicians.
Yeah, just to be clear, your alarmist, extremist views, it's not just Pennsylvania. I follow this professionally. I've been on the House Environmental Committee for almost 30 years. I am aware of what's nationally and locally and internationally what's happening. You are putting out extremist, alarmist, so cherry-picked facts, which frankly are ridiculous, and you should not be engaging in these scare tactics. You just should not be. It may help you sell books. It may help you get speaking engagements, but you should not be engaging in this misleading misinformation when we're dealing with such a serious issue.
What I'm doing, sir, is telling you exactly what the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the World Health Organization, you're calling that extreme and dangerous and cherry. No, it's actually, if you look at their words, there's actually a book called The Great Reset by the World Economic Forum chairman. Every major politician from Joe Biden to Boris Johnson to John Kerry to Al Gore has endorsed the Great Reset. It is very clearly outlined. If you're not hearing it at your meetings anywhere, it's because you're not looking at what's happening on the global stage and what our national leaders are doing, sir. Nothing I've said is extremist, and the only thing I've said that's extremist is reprint the exact words and plan. And you said climate lockdown. That was a phrase invented and used by a George Soros, Bill Gates funded scientist, Morano in Europe. So I'm sorry, just because you haven't heard of it doesn't make it not so. And none of this is extreme in the sense of the presentation, but the ideas are very extreme, and that's why I'm bringing them to your attention. And I wish books sold the way you do. This is not about making money off of a book, sir, because If you look at the world, the people on our side of the aisle don't make on climate skepticism and challenging the UN. There is not that kind of money of any kind to be made when you look at how much money is funneled into this other side and groups and the fight against climate. And point in fact would be the throwing of chicken soup on Van Gogh or pouring milk in grocery stores. This is directly funded by Hollywood directors to the tunes of millions of dollars. And Kennedy family and I believe Rockefeller family.
Please just stop. But you've answered my question. Just stop. I can't.
Representative Vitali,
this is not in response to my question.
Representative Vitali, you can.
It's hard.
If you finish your question, please shut your microphone off, Representative Vitali.
This is crazy. This is crazy.
Mr. Morano, if you could finish your thought, I would appreciate it. Maybe to finish your thought, I would appreciate you finishing it for my question, based on the minority chairman's disrespect to our presenters today. I mean, his climate alarmism has been rampant throughout the last 24 years that I've known him, and that he can sit here today and ignore data and facts that are laid out for him, and for you to put up, actual quotes from some of these radicals around the world that would like to take away the freedom of every person in the world to impose their own kind of society. For him to be able to ignore that and then claim it's you are the one who is the alarmist, you are the one who is creating these radical positions when you're just reporting on them and reporting on what people have actually said and done. So we appreciate that, and if you could finish your thoughts, I'd appreciate it.
All I was going to add is 230 medical journals, including all the top journals. Again, I would agree with him if I was like, hey, I got a Greenpeace blogger on some blog he wrote, look what they want to do, and I'm hyping it. 230 medical journals, the British Medical Journal, the journal Nature, the United Nations, the World. I'm giving you direct quotes. They want to use the climate response, the COVID response, as a template for how to deal with climate. The Center for Biological Diversity, a progressive left-wing environmental alarmist group, they're the ones that said Joe Biden will get 130 executive powers. The International Energy Agency is calling for shared vehicle use and essentially what you can only term an energy lockdown. I gave you that quote. You can see it in my I can provide the committee that has a PowerPoint. You can read it and research it. I have the links. So I just think if it sounds extreme and dangerous, if that's because it is, but every one of my sources could not be more mainstream. The Associated Press, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Newsweek, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, Journal Nature, all these medical journals, the journal Cell that Anthony Fauci wrote in. So I'm sorry, that criticism doesn't even get off the ground, sir.
And if you could share with my staff the PowerPoint, that would be appreciated because I can share it with the members at large, even outside of the committee, for some of the members that might have an interest in seeing some of these people's own words, showing what their intentions are, showing what their bad intentions are for Pennsylvania, even though it's not being heard a lot here by Representative Vitali, by their intentions for the United States and their intentions for the world. I think it should be frightening to anybody that loves freedom and liberty. And we appreciate the work that you're doing and appreciate you calling these people out with the things that they have said themselves to show just how radical and extreme they are.
And one final point I just want to make is another example is how the Green New Deal was introduced in Congress but never voted on, never scheduled for a hearing, never had town halls, never had anything. It just died. Why? Because Joe Biden made every cabinet agency a climate agency. He made the Treasury Department go after an ESG, environment, social governance style way to defund fossil fuel projects around the country. And now we have this climate emergency looming, plus its executive orders, because now we have the climate emergency looming. So you don't need a vote. They don't want a vote on this anymore. When they had supermajorities, when President Obama was president, I was working in the U.S. Senate as a staffer in the Environment and Public Works Committee. They barely got it passed in the House. It took 2 votes and a lot of strong arming by Nancy Pelosi to get that climate bill, the cap and trade bill, passed in June of 2009. By 2010, Harry Reid, Democrat majority leader, never even introduced the cap and trade bill. Why? Because a huge block of Democrats, including Al Franken from Minnesota, said they couldn't support it. Their constituents would never support this. So what happened? They went with executive orders, the Chinafication of America. COVID came along, and that really ramped up the idea of declaring emergencies and bypassing democracy. And this is the way they want to go forward, because they know if they have to wait for democracy to act on climate, It's never going to happen. And that's why this whole plan is now doable, because the people have been essentially softened up after 2.5 years of all the COVID restrictions. They want to move it over to these kind of climate energy restrictions, and they're very open about it. And again, I just want to repeat, every quote I gave you, the head of the World Economic Forum, UN climate chiefs, John Kerry, Al Gore, you can go through what Joe Biden has said, and every major institution from UN and World Health and all the medical journals and media outlets. It's incredible. And Joe Biden himself with his coming climate emergency, there is no way anyone could call this cringe. The ideas are scary and dangerous, and they do inspire fear, but it's not. Don't blame the messenger. I'm just telling you what the plans are, and I document it all very meticulously.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morano. We appreciate the work you've been doing, and appreciate you bringing this to our committee today. And hopefully more Americans will find out just what these radicals are attempting to do through the compliance that they saw by people around the world with their dictates through the pandemic. And unfortunately, we've seen so many Americans fall right in line with those dictates when they were unconstitutional dictates from the start and immoral. Thank you for your work. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to have this hearing.
Have a great day. Thank you. And thank you for your book that you sent over. I look forward to taking a look at it.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye. Bye.